Welcome back, my lovely listeners. Just wanted to pop in here today and say that the story for today, is titled Misfortune Part 4, The Investigation. This story is the fourth part to the Misfortune series. I know I said there were 3 parts of it originally. That's because there were. This part was actually written by me. It was written by me at the direction of Ghostchild. He gave me a lot of input on it whenever I wrote it. I wrote what I thought would be a fitting connection to the story, and he liked it, so I decided to keep going with it, wrote the entire section, and here we are. This one is not set up like a found footage, it's just a story that goes along with it, so hopefully you guys enjoy it. Let me know if you did, let me know if I should keep writing. If not, just say, hey, stop writing, and I'll not do that, because, anyway. Yeah, so here we go. This is Misfortune Part 4, The Investigation, by Ghostchild, and As the Raven Dreams. Enjoy. Is it going to be another one of those nights? Her voice had a hint of annoyance. More like an absolute layer of annoyance mixed with a small bit of aggression. You do realize it's 2 in the morning, right? I know, Shannon. I stared down at the desk with my head in my hands. Some nights, it was easy to give up and go to bed. But sometimes, the night would only lead my mind into a painful abyss of thought. I'm sorry, but yeah, it's one of those nights. They're getting more and more frequent, Hayden. She stood in the doorway to the small office. You need to think about seeing a therapist. A therapist isn't going to help me solve this. Neither is killing yourself like you have been. She had a point. I think you slept a total of 13 hours so far this week. It's not that bad. At least I'm sleeping some. Hayden, it's Thursday. She chuckled. I know you want to solve this, but you need to take care of yourself. If you end up keeling over from a heart attack, then who's going to find her? It's been 3 years at this point. You're the only thing keeping this case from going into a filing cabinet. 3 years, 2 months, and 6 days. My eyes were locked on a picture of a young girl with copper hair as my mind swam in a pool of regret, frustration, and whiskey. Not that I've been counting or anything. Well, Shannon sighed heavily. I was hurting her as much as I was hurting myself with all this. Look, just come to bed whenever you can. I will. I dismissed her concern. Don't worry about me, dear. I'll be fine. I just need a little more time on this. I could hear her slowly turn and walk back down the hallway, then close the bedroom door behind her. The fact that she shut the door told me that she knew I wasn't going to be coming to bed that night. Like every other night, I was going to continue staring over my own notes, photographs of my niece and her friends, and then black out around 4 in the morning. I'd lost count of how many times I'd done this, but I knew it was well into the triple digits. It wasn't quite as frequent at first, but it got its grip on me right around the time I lost hope Liz would be coming back. I don't know how 3 full years had passed since she disappeared. I could remember the phone call like it happened this morning. My brother called me and told me that no one knew where Liz was. I remember rushing over to her place, taping everything off, scraping together as many clues as I could. Going through her laptop, I found these weird vlog-style videos. It looked like she and her friends were working on some sort of art project. I remember trying to get a hold of Ray, Eric, and Adrian, but none of them could be found. I called their parents, and they hadn't heard from them for almost a month. That's when I started connecting Liz to more cases. There were almost half a dozen missing people from the beginning of that same year. There were 3 more in 2018. How the hell had 14 people gone missing with little to no investigation? How the hell do the police of that small rural town sleep at night knowing they haven't done a damn thing to locate more than a dozen young adults that just up and vanished? It made me sick to think about. I double-clicked on one of the videos and watched as the program loaded up the short clip of my niece with her friends. So we made it to the woods, guys. Ray is setting up the tent with our friend Liz that we brought along. Eric's deep voice boomed from the speaker of the computer, then the camera pivoted towards Liz. She smiled and hid her face as she held one of the props for the tent. I closed that video and clicked another. It was a short video from the same day, but a few hours later. Liz, do you think we'll actually see something? Ray stared at Liz from his lawn chair. I don't think so. She shrugged and stared out into the woods. What were you all trying to see? I shook my head and stared at the folder of evidence. There were so many clips, so many short videos of seemingly random things happening. Was this serious? Was this just an art project? I held my head. No, it had to be some dumb thing they were doing for fun. Monsters don't exist, Hayden. I dropped my forehead into my right hand. The alcohol had worked its magic. I was sitting here thinking that maybe a monster had taken my niece into the woods and killed her. I was legitimately questioning whether or not some beast from the 1800s had murdered these kids because of some pact with the devil made by some lunatic over 200 years ago. No, it had to be one of those dumb kids' games like Bloody Mary or Slenderman. One of those campfire stories meant to make it hard to sleep at night. Basically, just some adolescent bullshit that wasn't even worth thinking about. I stared at the back of my eyelids for a few more moments, just trying to drown out the painful tension that filled the silence in my head. The darkness in my vision stretched out for miles, and the silence, albeit accompanied by the starting of a headache, was comforting, as it settled into every crevice that was the void of my big, empty skull. I could feel myself drifting off into a state of pure relaxation, a slight trance even, just humming along to the silence and slowly falling into an infinite emptiness. The only thing that interrupted the silence was a strange ping of static, followed by a faint sound. It sounded like screams, like the muffled screams of a scared group of young adults that couldn't escape whatever nightmare had taken over their existence. The darkness started to give way to what felt like an empty TV channel, pure static to match the grinding sound that was starting to pull the silence out from the recesses of my mind. The static and screams gave way to a voice. This voice sounded so familiar, yet so foreign. The words it spoke were jarring and painful. They cut deeply into the hollowness of this slumber as they ripped into my mind. There is no escape. There is no end. I could hear a sense of arrogance to the voices that chimed in. The screams and confusion slowly gave way to the voice and to the symbol in the static. Embrace. Follow the carriers. From within the static of my mind was an image I'd seen before. It was an X with an arrow pushing through it vertically. This image felt like it was calling out my name. Like it was trying to pull me to something that I was supposed to find. Something I was supposed to... Hayden! The voice shouting pulled me from my focused thoughts and forced my head upwards. Did you seriously sleep here all night? Huh? I stared around and wiped drool from my cheek. Oh, shit. As the room came into focus, I realized where I was and what was happening. Oh, Shannon, I'm sorry. I shook my head and tried to focus on the room. What time is it? It's 5:30. She grimaced at me. You blacked out again? Something like that. I glanced over toward the small TV in my office. The black screen reflected the floor back at me. Hey, when you came in here last night, was the TV on? Like, just on a staticky screen or anything like that? Hayden, I don't think you've turned that thing on in about 2 years. She dropped a mug of coffee on the desk. Why? Did you have a weird dream or something? Yeah, some strange-ass dream about static and some creepy-ass voice. I grabbed the mug and took a gulp of the scorching liquid. That was incredibly painful. Thank you. You have some incredibly boring dreams. Shannon leaned against the trim of the doorway and smirked at me. You literally dreamed of static? Yeah, it was probably nothing. I drank the rest of my coffee, slammed the mug back down, and stood up from my chair. Sorry I didn't come to bed last night. Shouldn't you call in? I can't imagine you actually slept. I slept enough. I grabbed my jacket and phone and kissed Shannon goodbye before walking out the door. The open road was nothing more than another chance to get lost in my own mind, thinking of Liz, of her friends, and of the others that had gone missing. It was also another chance to think about the dream I'd had. Why was I still thinking about it? Why was I still focusing on something so unimportant? And what was the point of the voice? What did it mean by, follow the carrier? A whispered voice echoed from what appeared to be the car speaker. I glared down at the radio. The LED was brightly lit with the word off, the exact way that I had it every day when I drove to work. I was never one for the radio. I didn't care for music, yet my speakers were talking to me. What the hell is going on? I shook my head and stared back at the road as I pulled into the station. I was losing it, plain and simple. The lack of sleep, the rapid deterioration of my mind from the drinking, and the stress was finally going to take its toll on me. It was about damn time. Morning, Hayden. Randall Pierce. My eccentric young partner, more like my underling and soon-to-be replacement, shouted in my direction. You look like shit today. Hey, right back at ya. I grinned and shot my insult back his way. But yeah, I do. I hardly slept last night. I'm pretty sure you wore that shirt yesterday. Randy chuckled and shook his head. I wore these pants too. I didn't get dressed this morning. I sat at my desk, pressed the power button on my monitor, and stared at my wallpaper. My mind started racing again as I stared at the various icons and folders. Hey, Randy? What's up, Hayden? Do you want to go get a drink tonight after hours? My treat. I stared at my screen and opened up my email and the case file program. You're asking about going to the bar this early in the morning? Yeah, I like to plan ahead. I typed in the case number that I was looking for. Well, Hayden, I could hear Randy chuckle slightly. As much as I would love to go out with you tonight to the bar, I have plans with Derek tonight. You know he gets upset if I cancel on him. Damn, I glanced over at him. You really do love him more than you love me, don't you? Oh, come on now, don't do that. He laughed again. It's not that I love him more, we just have the whole legal thing going on. Something about a ring and a ceremony. Yeah, gotta throw that marriage BS at me as an excuse. Consider it a rain check. Randy leaned back toward his monitor and went back to typing whatever he was typing. My computer made a beeping noise indicating that I had a new email. I clicked over to it and read the message that I had received. A channel you subscribe to has uploaded a new video. I clicked it and opened it. What are you... My voice trailed off as I clicked the link inside the message. A browser window popped up and loaded a video site. The video quickly loaded, and a slightly glitched image popped up on the screen. Okay, so this asshole slashed my tires, and I keep getting those nosebleeds. I don't even think I can leave because Mr. Misfortune Fuckface is always watching me. The man in the video let out a very heavy sigh and dropped his eyes onto the table in front of him. I just don't know what to do. The man in the video stared back at the camera, and blood started dripping from his nose and down onto his shirt. His eyes were locked on the camera for several moments before the video started to distort. After a few seconds of the distortion, the video cleared back up with the young man grinning at the camera. His shirt had a significant amount of blood on it, and the room was darker. His toothy smile was nothing short of terrifying. There is no escape. There is no end. Embrace. The man started to laugh slightly and once more opened his mouth to speak. Follow the carrier. What the hell is this shit? I shook my head and looked over the page. There was no indication of who had uploaded it, who owned it. Nothing about the page looked familiar, and I certainly hadn't subscribed to any channel like this. I stared at the scene and tried to piece together everything. The video was shot in what looked like a dining room, a comfortable room with dim lighting. The young man looked familiar to me, but I couldn't quite place him. I kept staring, trying to figure out who it was or what was going on, when I noticed something on the outside of the window. The figure looked like a tall man with gray skin, long hair, and dark eyes. It looked almost human, but it wasn't. As I focused on the figure and went to take a screenshot of it, the page of the video closed. Damn it! I quickly opened my email back up and went to my inbox, but the message was nowhere to be found. I clicked on the trash folder, the spam folder, and each of the other folders that existed, but the message was nowhere to be found. Hey, Randy, do you know how to find an email if it disappears? What do you mean by disappear? He disregarded my frustration. Like, disappear. I wasn't sure how else to explain it. It was there, it was open, and how it's gone. It's not in the trash or anything like that, it's just literally gone. You could have the IT department check the server and see if they have a copy of it. They have a retention policy of 30 days, so all messages are saved there. They could log in and forward it back into your inbox. He glanced over toward me, only to be met with the confused stare of a man that was out of sync with technology. Do you want me to ask them to do it? Could you? I have no idea what you just told me to do. I nodded slightly. Sure thing, Gramps. Randy laughed at me again. What was the email about? I don't know, it was some video or something. I closed my email and opened the case file again. I clicked through the save files of the case when I pulled up a picture of a young man. Actually, it was a video about this guy. Eric Williams? Randy's voice had a tone of disbelief. He's been missing since May of 2016. He was friends with your niece. He shifted his look toward me. Are you sure it was him? Yeah, he was sitting at a kitchen table talking about a Mr. Misfortune slashing his tires and how he couldn't leave. I looked down at the keyboard. Then he said something about following the carrier? Huh. Randy bit his lips slightly and patted me on the shoulder. Well, hey, I'm gonna let you sit here and lose it, and I think I'll go talk to the IT guys directly. You know, give you a couple of minutes to yourself. Oh, shut up. I shook my head. He was right. It did sound insane. Thank you, though. I appreciate it. He walked away, leaving me to stare at the picture of Eric. How the hell did he send me a video? And what the hell was that in the background? I shook the questions from my mind. They weren't going to get answered by anyone or anything around me. I clicked through the evidence folder and opened various items. I did this every day. Even though I was supposed to be working on other things, I opened the case file every morning without fail. I shuffled through the pictures. Photos of Eric, photos of Liz, of Ray. There were photos of their bedrooms, of the small traces of blood left behind in each. There were short reports about what the techs found in each location, of the minimal evidence that was left behind in the disappearance of each of them. This information linked to the other two collective cases. Josh, Matthew, Anthony, Mason, Ryan, Dylan. All of it was linked together within one file. And all of it seemed to have the same amount of information. Even with this all being true, nothing in the files seemed to point to any answers. Nothing pointed toward any hint or semblance of possibility of ever solving this case. I clicked through the photographs and opened up the last one on the list. The photograph was of Liz's room. It was mostly empty, and it didn't look like there had been much of a struggle. Off to the side of the photograph, I noticed what looked like a notebook, and on the cover was that same symbol I saw in my dream. It was an X with an arrow through it, pointing vertically in both directions. Why was this on a notebook in Liz's room? Most importantly, what was in it? I shoved myself away from my desk and walked downstairs to the evidence room. I signed in and made my way toward the corner of the evidence room that I knew quite well. I grabbed the box and rifled through the contents, tossing items onto the floor until I got to the orange notebook from the photograph. The cover had the symbol, drawn crudely in pen and scratched into the cardboard cover. I grabbed the edge of the evidence envelope and ripped it open, chain of custody be damned, and then pulled the notebook out and started flipping through the pages. The first few pages were laid out like a normal journal. Notes about Liz's day, information about things going on with her friends. April 2nd, 2016. We decided to go camping for fun. They kept mentioning some legend. April 9th, 2016. We got an email from some girl named Anna. She seems to know something. April 23rd, 2016. Adrian is missing. Ray refuses to talk about it. He seems distant. Should we get the cops? May 1st, 2016. Something is wrong. I keep feeling like someone is watching me. I keep feeling like something is creeping around my window, but every time I look, there's no one there. I stared at this entry. This was seemingly the last thing written in the diary, and it was written on the day that she was presumed to have gone missing. She knew something was going to happen. I could feel my face getting hot. Why didn't you call me, Lizzie? Why didn't you tell someone? I sighed and closed my eyes as the rush of emotion came over me. You could have called me. I would have been there. I slowly started to shut the notebook, when I noticed that there was a page near the end of the journal, among the empty pages, that had something written on it. I turned to it and stared at the words. Wait, this was written after she... My words drifted off as I read the writing. May 5th, 2016. Find the carrier, follow the carrier, find the cabin in Lake Hill Woods. There, the carrier waits. I closed the notebook and stared off into the evidence room. It was more nonsense about whatever the hell the carrier was. Why had no one logged this? Why had no one taken a photo of this entry? Why had this not been made part of the investigation? This was obviously an important part of this whole situation. Unless it wasn't there. My words slipped through my lips as I thought about the possibility. Whatever this situation was, it was starting to look less and less like it was rooted in reality. Something about this felt like it was almost paranormal or supernatural. Like something was calling to me. The dream, the voice, the video, and now this. Logic quickly made its way through the window of my brain, and I could feel myself becoming engrossed in this crazy urban legend. I tossed the notebook back into the box and shut it, shoving it back on the shelf, and then turned to press my back against the wall. What if this stupid game was real? What if there was some demonic entity that cursed the woods and hunted on those who managed to summon him? There was really only one way to find out. I left the evidence room and started making my way toward the front door. Randy stepped out of the elevator and stopped me. There you are, Hayden, he cheerfully greeted me. So, I asked IT about that email. They said that nothing had come into your account all morning. Not sure if it was spam or something, but the system didn't see it. He glanced at me with a look of concern. Where are you going? Is everything okay? Randy, I need you to cover for me. I need to head out for a little bit. I didn't mean to be rude and dismiss him, but if there was something that I needed to find in Lake Hill Woods, then I was going to go right then and there. I may have something on Liz's case. Oh, should I go grab my jacket? I can come with you if you need me to. He gestured toward the elevator. No, it's all right. In the case that I was going crazy, I couldn't risk him seeing me lose it. It's just one of those gut feelings, and it's probably nothing, but I'll be back in a little bit. All right. I could tell that he was still concerned about the situation. Just call me if you need backup. I'll be there faster than you can hang up the phone. All right, Hayden? Thanks. I patted him on the shoulder and quickly left the station. The road was fairly clear for the time of day, and the trip out to the patch of woods near Lake Hill was a quick one. My wheels pressed into the soft ground of the parking area. I threw my door open and stepped out onto the gravel. What the hell was my plan? What was I going to do? How the hell was I ever going to find a cabin that supposedly resided in this area? Follow? A voice rang in my ear from what felt like every direction. I glanced around the area until my eyes fell on a young man standing in the distance and staring at me. Follow the carrier. Well, if you want me to follow you, then lead the damn way, I shouted at him. I'd had about enough of this. His mouth shifted into a smile and he turned, walking into the forest. I shoved my hand down and undid the holster of my gun. If I was going to blindly follow this kid into the woods, I was going to do so armed. I followed him through the tree line, keeping a safe distance from him and watching both directions for any sign of an ambush. After what felt like forever, he took a sharp turn and I lost track of where he was. I pulled my gun and held it down, turning in a slow circle and looking for him. What the hell had I just gotten myself into? You wanted me to follow you and then you disappear, I shouted out into the empty air. Where the hell did you go? I stared in the direction I saw him turn and took a step forward. My boot fell toward the ground, but was cut short by something on the ground. I looked down and noticed that there was a small gift box that had been meticulously placed. Oh, this for me? I shouted again, waiting for anything to answer. It's not going to blow up when I open it, is it? Still, no response. I knelt down and grabbed the small box, slowly pulling the lid off. The craziness of the day had me half expecting to be bitten by some exotic snake that had been coiled into the small box, but it of course did not happen. As I pulled the lid off, I saw nothing more than a small piece of paper, a note with a hastily written message. Turn around? I stared at the paper for a second, then quickly turned around, lifting my handgun, ready to take down whatever was likely to attack me. To my surprise, there was now a small cabin placed comfortably among the trees. This cabin wasn't there before. I knew for a fact it wasn't there. What the absolute hell? I muttered my pointless question. How did the cabin suddenly appear? How did they pull this trick off? I stepped toward the door of the cabin and knocked, shoving my pistol into my pocket. I honestly had no idea what else I should do. This cabin didn't exist less than a minute ago, and now it did, and I was obviously supposed to be here. You didn't have to knock, you know. The young man in the cabin pulled the door open and quickly glanced up at me. Oh, you're not... What the hell is this place? The question wasn't the one I intended to ask, but it's the one that came from my mouth. It's my home? He stared at me confused. I'm sorry, who are you and what are you doing here? I have no idea. I stared at the man in front of me, then into the cabin. The decor of the cabin was minimal. There was a bed and a table and not much else. I'm Detective Hayden Richardson, and you are... Wondering why you're on my property without a warrant. Your property? I shook my head. Son, your cabin is on federally protected land. You live in the forest behind Lake Hill. Close, but not quite. I own this corner of the land. I have all the documentation that outlines my property against the forest, and if you come back with a warrant, you can look at it. The tone of his voice was almost arrogant. I stared at his dark eyes. Something about this man was familiar. Do I know you? I questioned him. You look familiar. I've seen you somewhere. Maybe. I have no idea who you are. You were one of them. I nodded and took a step forward. You were one of the people that went missing. I have no idea what you're talking about, Detective, and I would appreciate it if you would please take a step back and get off my doorstep. His tone became more defensive. Ray. I finally placed a name to the face. You're Ray. I pushed my way into the cabin past him. Yeah, you're one of those kids that did the whole ritual in the woods and then disappeared. Detective, get out of my house. What the hell are you doing here? Where is everyone else? Where's Eric? Where's Liz? I pushed on in my questioning. Detective, you need to get... I turned and grabbed him by the shirt, cutting his statement in half. Where are they? I gritted my teeth as I stared him eye to eye and held him against the wall. Where is Liz? The look on his face started out as one of minor panic, but quickly turned into a slight smirk as he stared at me. Tell me where my niece is, or so help me, I'll make whatever demon you summoned the least of your problems, you son of a bitch. Detective, please. Ray chuckled slightly. Don't bring my mother into this. She was such a nice woman. You think this is funny? I reached down and grabbed my gun again, placing the barrel against Ray's chin. You think I'll hesitate for a minute to pull this goddamn trigger? If you know where my niece is, either you tell me, or I'll paint your walls a new fucking shade of red. Do it. Ray stared at me eye to eye and smirked. Pull the trigger, Detective. Pull the trigger and put an end to this. Pull the trigger. I kept my eyes locked on his. They were dark, distant, almost inhuman. As I stared at him, pulling in deep and aggressive breaths, I started to feel my head fill with pressure. The veins in my neck started to tense and pump harder, and then I felt a stream of blood fall from my nose. Ah, damn it. I pulled away and wiped my face. The amount of blood was enough to be concerning. What the hell did you do to me? You should embrace it, Detective. Ray started to laugh as he spoke. Embrace it. Embrace what? I was feeling flustered as my head pounded. What the hell do you want me to embrace? What the hell do you want me to do? I want you to embrace the power. Ray lifted his arms and started looming in the corner of the room. I want you to lift your gun and shoot me.
Kill me.
His voice sounded aggressive as he stared at me. Either you kill me, or I kill you. It's your decision. Oh, like hell. I balanced myself and stared at the young man in front of me. He wasn't human anymore. Whatever demon had taken him over had finally gotten control of the situation, and there was only one way out of this. Tell Liz I love her. I raised my gun and pulled the trigger as quickly as I could. The bullet ripped through the air and met its mark, piercing Ray's skin. As the bullet entered his flesh, he stood there and continued staring at me, a twisted smile on his face. I pulled the trigger again and again and again, yet he was unaffected by the metal piercing his skin. I could tell then that no matter how many rounds I put into this kid, he wasn't going to go down. If you're quite done, he glanced down at the wounds, then back in my direction. What the hell are you? I shouted at him, the distress and confusion of the situation taking over my voice. I am more than you could ever hope to understand, Detective. Ray's eyes grew darker until they were nearly pure black. I'm not, however, merciless. I'll give you what you want, then I'll take what I want. His black eyes and twisted grin shot in my direction, and the pounding in my head increased. I held the side of my head and shut my eyes tightly. I groaned in absolute agony. Slowly the pain subsided, and I opened my eyes again, only to see that I was now knelt over in the middle of nowhere. I stood up and took in my surroundings. Black sky, trees, wet leaves on the ground. Behind me stood a group of 4 people. I instantly recognized all 4 of them, almost as if the information was fresh in my mind. On the far left was Mason, the person that led me into the woods. Next to him was Matthew and Alice, both of them looking pale and lifeless, yet they're standing staring at me. In the front was Ray, once again looming in the foreground. Are you satisfied? What? I asked, confused. Satisfied with what? You said you would give me what I wanted. Where the hell is Liz? Ray smirked again and nodded to something behind me. I slowly turned to look at what he was motioning toward. On the ground was an area with dirt piled onto it, a small stone placed near the top. No. I shook my head. No, she's not gone. I stepped toward the grave and fell to my knees. No, please tell me she's not gone. I've spent all this time trying to find her, hoping she was still alive. Please don't tell me this was all for nothing. I wouldn't say it was for nothing. Ray's voice echoed from behind me. It led you here. You now have your closure. He laughed slightly. But now it's my turn to get what I want. He stepped toward me and placed a hand on my shoulder. It's unfortunate that we had to meet under these circumstances, Hayden. But now, I think it's time for you to wake up. His words exploded in my head, once again filling the silence with a deafening static, and I could feel my heart pounding faster and faster with each beat. The pain in my skull became nothing shy of excruciating. The screeching static took over all of my senses and pulled me toward the ground. I fell unconscious, feeling the dirt of the forest floor cake onto my face as I collapsed. My eyes slowly started to open. The pounding in my head continued to dull my senses as I tried to see anything. Slowly, my vision came into focus, and I could feel what seemed to be a light carpet under my face. I blinked a couple of times at what looked to be a body in front of me. I slowly pieced together the face that was staring back in my direction, lifelessly. I coughed, blood spraying through my lips. Shannon? I stared at my wife's pale face, twisted in a look of fear. Shannon? How? As my eyes focused on her, I started to realize the cabin was gone. I was lying on my own living room floor. Oh God. I pushed myself up and looked around the room. The coffee table was overturned, the entire room was disorganized. There was a large amount of blood on the carpet where I was lying, and I could feel the wetness on my face, neck, and shirt. I stood and took in the entire room, the entire scene in front of me. There was a gun in my hand, my wife was lying on the ground dead from several gunshot wounds, and I was covered in blood. I had killed her. But how? I tried remembering anything, but nothing was coming to me. I shot Ray. I fell against the wall and took in the chaos in front of me. The quiet stillness of the room was ripped apart by distant police sirens. I had been out long enough for the cops to be called, and they were going to be there quickly. I had to get out of there. I had to figure out how this all happened. I ran out the front door and toward where my car was parked in the yard. I threw the door open and started the car, slamming the gas pedal and speeding down the road. This wasn't the end. I was going to find that cabin and make Ray tell me what the hell he had done. I continued down the road toward Lake Hill Woods and pulled off to the side of the road. My heart was racing. My head was spinning as the gravity of the event finally took grip on me. As the adrenaline subsided, I threw my head back and closed my eyes. Oh, God. I took a deep, panicked breath in. I killed my wife. The tears welled up and quickly poured down my cheek. I killed Shannon. I shot my wife. I punched the steering wheel and screamed in anger. What the hell happened? I stared at the woods for a moment and then glanced up into my rearview mirror. In my back seat, I could see a tall man with black eyes and gray skin staring straight at me, razor-sharp teeth gleaming in a horrific smile. My head began pounding again, and the static started ringing once again in my ears. The monster continued its glare as it slowly opened its mouth, showing the points of its murderous smile.
Well, that was unfortunate.
So there you go, my dear listeners. I hope that you enjoyed that story. Once again, that was Misfortune Part 4, The Investigation. I wrote this to be an offshoot from Part 2, mostly. Obviously, with Liz being Hayden's niece, you had more of a connection to Part 2, but I just wanted to write a story that was in this universe, because I think that Ghost Child did a really good job making this whole world, and I hope that it turned out good enough. I hope you guys really appreciate it. If not, leave me a comment saying it was crap. You know, that's fine. Yeah, so once again, thank you all for listening. Down in the description, you'll find links to my Twitter, Facebook, and my Reddit, and a page where you can submit a story to me if you have one to share. And also, if you enjoyed the video, please do hit that thumbs up button. Please do hit that subscribe button. And please do leave me a comment. I would love to hear from you, even if it is you saying that story was crap. Don't really have much more to say. Amino for this world is down in the comments. You can check that out. Thank you to Ghost Child for letting me read this series. I believe this is the last part. And I'm going to release a video with all 4 of them together as one here soon, too. Thank you all. I love you guys. Have a great day. But until next time, sleep well.